Welcome to the Social Hotelier Show. I'm Sam-Erik Ruttmann, and today we explore how purpose-driven hospitality can transform not just destinations, but people leading them. My guest, Portia Hart, is a visionary hotelier and the founder of Blue Apple Beach, the Green Apple Foundation, Nuestra Cartagena, collective, a network of independent brands redefining Colombia's Caribbean coast. Her work challenges the traditional boundaries of luxury, in culture, creativity, and conscience. From the shores of Tierra Bomba to the heart of Cartagena's Old Town, Portia has built a portfolio that celebrates inclusion, sustainability, and the art of meaningful connection. And at the core of it all, a leadership culture shaped by a woman. Portia's approach shows how empathy, collaboration, and courage can become powerful business tools, setting a new tone for what modern hospitality leadership looks like. Today, we will explore the movement behind Blue Apple and its evolution with the Pink Mango, the social impact of Green Apple Foundation, and the creative pulse of Townhouse and Speakeasy, the vision-driven Nuestra Cartagena, all leading to a conversation about legacy, equity, and purpose. Portia Hart joins me now to share the story behind the movement and what it truly means to build with intention. So Portia, welcome back. It's really great to connect with you and have a conversation with you today.
Sam-Erik, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, when we met first time, we talked about Blue Apple Beach, and I will refer to it, but I think for the viewers who are joining for the first time, I will just put the link somewhere here, and then they can watch the first episode just to see how it all started, because it's an exciting conversation as it is already. But, Blue Apple by now has becoming something of a legend, not just for its setting, but for the spirit it represents. It's more than a beach club. It became a movement in sustainable hospitality. So how do you keep the original sense of rebellion alive as it matures into a recognized brand?
What a question. I suppose, first of all, I'd have to accept that Blue Apple is something of a legend, which makes me feel pretty cool. I'm going to have to hire you to do my marketing. I think part of my nature is that I don't like to stand still for too long. Blue Apple, yes, she's 9.5 years old, so very much established. How do we keep that sense of rebellion? I think because all of my businesses and everything I do, in some small way, I think is my reaction to the world. And I have quite a rebellious spirit. And the Blue Apple that I live and run today is very different from the Blue Apple that I opened back in 2016. So when I came in 2016, and we won't go into too much detail on Blue Apple, as you say, because there's a whole other episode on it. But I really saw a burgeoning tourism scene in Cartagena, and I saw some really fabulous offerings in the center of town, and then not really anything of the same level on the island. So my focus was very much on quality. I had a very specific idea of the products that I wanted to develop and offer to the market. Today, there's lots of competition. There are lots of other beach clubs. Cartagena's tourism scene has developed. So me coming to market with a product is no longer particularly interesting. But what I've learned is, after living for a decade here in Cartagena, is that business can do so much more than just make money for its shareholders. And especially when you're operating somewhere like Colombia and then somewhere like the island that I operate on, where there's so much inequality, so much lacking. You begin to say, well, okay, I've got this product. And that serves, decent lunch and rosé and music to people, fabulous. But how can I make it serve more? How can I make it serve the local community, its neighbors? How can I make it serve local tourists? How can we create a space that is adding value at really every contact point? So I suppose the more I learn, the more Blue Apple can answer that question. And in fact, the other businesses that I'm involved in and the other initiatives that I'm operating.
So when guests arrive at the Blue Apple, what invisible choices behind the scenes, ethical, social, or creative, most shape their experience?
That is a tough question because our guests are all so different. Something that I've seen since kind of throwing away some of the rules about marketing and how we present our brands. Anyone who's seen the bad reviews about Blue Apple on TripAdvisor and Google and has read my replies will realize that this is somebody who's not following the rule book too closely. we've shed the rules, which means that we get a very diverse range of customer. So I might have a single or solo Black traveler who's a woman who says, saw your story on the website, and I was so moved that people like us can own our own businesses, and that I can travel to a business that's run by somebody like me, and I can support that business and feel safe. And that's maybe a very different story from somebody who is a vegan and has really struggled to find a hotel where they can be in a resort setting and actually have interesting food for 5 days, versus somebody who's just coming perhaps on their honeymoon and wanted to choose an ethical business. So I think we do so many things that speak to different people in different ways. Personally, what I look for when I travel, and something that I'm pleased that Blue Apple is able to achieve, is the platform that we give to our team. So yes, Blue Apple is in some ways the Portia show. It's my baby. I sort of created it, but I'm not there every day. As you can see, I'm not there right now. And I think what really makes it feel special is when you're a foreigner and you check into this place, and every single person whom you speak with has a sense of ownership and pride and can talk to you not only about where you are, but about them as people. And that human connection, often we don't know that we're looking for it until we find it. And then we say, this place feels really special. And that's increasingly when I travel anywhere in the world, and whether I'm fortunate enough to be staying somewhere that's 5 stars, or whether I'm backpacking, or whether I'm in a homestay or even an Airbnb, what I'm looking for is something that feels genuine, human, and warm, and where it's not just about a brand or a founder, but actually where every person that I meet feels like a part of my experience in a real way.
Yeah, I mean, I have not had a chance to visit you yet, but I only watched this from various social media posts, and I was very happy to see how you have engaged the staff to be in front of the camera, and how they are very proud of what they're doing, and that for someone who's just getting a glimpse of what's going on, actually it makes it very special. So I think you have come across. I mean, from the last time we spoke, I always thought about, oh, how is she doing the social media? And then I was flabbergasted, and I see that you're all over the place, and you're getting so many people, and you're getting your staff, which I think is even more important, that they are in a way sharing the story about their life at the Blue Apple. And I thought that was a very fantastic thing that you're doing, that gives them the kind of a stage, because they are one way they are the stars of that place also.
I mean, I always say with businesses like ours, I never know whether I'm the producer or the director. But one thing is for sure, I'm not the headline movie star. That is the team. Those are your chefs, your front of house, even your back of house. We've got carpenters that make every stick of furniture at Blue Apple is handmade on site. And so for me, I wouldn't want to put my name all over the poster. It's there, but there's lots of other people that make this show quite so special.
Very good. Okay, so let's move over to the Pink Mango Beach Shack coming soon. I put it in brackets. A new expression. It's clear that Blue Apple sparked the movement, but your next project sounds like it's about to shake up things again. The name alone, Pink Mango, feels like pure energy. Tell me about this new chapter.
Well, the Pink Mango actually was a dream that came about in about 2019. And when I say 2019, I think you're going to know why it didn't happen in 2020. And I remember for a while, actually, all of my kind of creative energy was going into this idea of the Pink Mango. And as I said, when I opened Blue Apple, I was sort of fresh off the boat, if you like, from living in Europe, in the Mediterranean. And I had this concept of the beach clubs that I'd grown up visiting and wanting to do something like that here in Colombia. And then a few years in, obviously, I've learned a lot about where I am. I've connected with the local culture, music, food, flavor. And the idea behind Pink Mango is to be able to celebrate the Caribbean. And something that I've realized when people ask me, why did you come to Colombia and why did you stay? And of course, they always think, oh, you must have met a Colombian man and you must have gotten married and that's why you're there. And actually, I've asked myself this question a lot. It took me several years to answer. The reason I'm happy living here in Cartagena in the Caribbean is, of course, because I am half Caribbean. My mother is from Trinidad and Tobago. And while I was born and raised in the UK, there is an element of Caribbean tropical heat in my blood, which simply wasn't, I suppose, awake when I was in Northern Europe. And when I came here, I felt very much at home, even though everything was technically foreign language, foreign climate, foreign culture. But I saw my mother everywhere. I now understand why my mother is always late. And the Pink Mango is my way, I think, of leaning into that other side of who I am. So it's not a hotel. It's a very, very simple beach club. And it's very relaxed. We use the word chiringuito, which is a Spanish word that kind of means something like a shack, but maybe sounds a bit more charming. We're not trying to make Pink Mango look fancy. We're not trying to say this is luxury. But we have the same executive chef. We have the same creative director. We have the same head of human resources, which is funny when you talk about hospitality and you talk about human resource, but actually our people are what make us so special. And then, of course, I'm there as well. So the idea we had was, how can we take the quality of what we're doing in Blue Apple and the values and our ethics, and how can we apply them to a business model that's more accessible, so that we can have a lower price point, so that more local people can experience our way of doing things, so that more local people can come and have a meal that's affordable, but that's also ethical. And also, how can we ramp up the fun, right? So not having hotel guests, not being worried about being included in a Michelin guide allows us to be a bit more free and easy, and allows us to be more respectful of what island culture really is, which is kind of take it easy, coge la suave, as they say here in Cartagena. We don't have a coconut supplier at Pink Mango. If you'd like to have a coconut, someone goes up a tree, they bring it down for you. And when there are no more coconuts, there are no more coconuts. I think that very much is the idea behind it. And it's also, ironically, a place where people from the hospitality industry can have a day off that is affordable, but also at a level that they are providing to tourists and guests visiting Cartagena, but it's at that same level and within their price point.
Is there some sort of a new emotional or cultural territory you want to Pink Mango to explore, or something? Because I felt that the Blue Apple is more a conscious hospitality. Pink Mango is a little bit different. But is there something that you could speak about to a little bit deeper into what Pink Mango represents, so people can have a flair of what you're planning of doing with this?
I mean, I think conscious or responsible hospitality, it will always be the backbone of everything I do going forward. Pink Mango, for me, it's about inclusivity. It's about people from any background being able to go there and feel comfortable. And what I love, and we've seen it recently, having friends who are, they live in Switzerland, they're very privileged, and they feel really comfortable sitting in Pink Mango next to a family who are from the village of Tierra Bomba just next door. And nobody feels awkward or out of place. And I think diving into this idea of how, yes, we come from different tribes, and yes, we have our different social circles and we have our different cultures, but that at the base level, there is a way that humans can all connect with one another. And it's really challenging when you work in hospitality to create a space where everybody feels comfortable. Because if you have a very high-end space, perhaps somebody that is not accustomed to that can feel a little bit intimidated. If you have a space that's very, very relaxed and very low profile, perhaps you have some of your higher end customers that kind of feel like this is a bit too basic. So I think that magic of finding deep quality in the service and the food, and also a setting that really, well, it's nature, isn't it? The beach is really for everybody.
Yeah.
So we're trying not to get too involved. There's not too much of us, not too much furniture, but just this very strong focus on how do we make every single person here feel comfortable.
Okay, excellent. I'd like to move over now to the Green Apple Foundation. What's striking is that your projects don't just entertain, they educate and empower. That commitment seems to come to life most clearly through the Green Apple Foundation. I'd love to understand how that works behind the scenes. You said before that business without impact feels incomplete. So how does the Green Apple Foundation ensure that your projects give more than they take?
I thought you were going to say, talking about the green apple, it seems like all you do is talk about fruits. I think what I should say is I don't spend that much time thinking about names. So when we started Green Apple, it actually wasn't its own independent entity. Green Apple was an answer to a problem. We worked on an island that didn't have any waste collection services. We needed to reduce the amount of waste we were producing, and we came up with a solution. And I say we, this was not my own genius. I worked with many very talented and very knowledgeable people. And the solution was so good that others came and said, can you help us with this problem? Because we have the same problem. And I wonder if I would do the same today. But at that time, I was very nervous about being seen to profit from doing something which I felt was not my area of expertise and not my primary business. So I said, okay, we're going to split this out. Blue Apple is not going to provide this service to our competitors. We're going to make a separate entity. And I'm going to be very, very clear to everyone that this is not a profiteering business for me. Am I pleased that I made that decision? I think so, because I think it's given Green Apple more opportunity. We now work with about 40 businesses in Cartagena. We've trained just over 3,000 members of hospitality staff in waste management and sustainable supply chain and how to operate a hospitality business in a way that does reduce your environmental impact. How do I feel that it sort of represents who we are and makes sure that my businesses are overall, let's say, having a positive impact? I think it's precisely that reach. For me, I'm a nosy person. I think that the nice way to say that is curious. I like to understand what's in other people's heads. I like to see how other people do things. And I like to be in a community. I don't like to operate completely isolated. And Green Apple is this magical bridge that enables me to connect with so many of my colleagues in the hospitality space here. And not just island hotels, but restaurants, bars, very high-end venues, really small venues, independently owned businesses, big chains. And it gives us a chance to meet and talk and learn. And I mean, that for me is absolutely thrilling because we leave school and then we sort of learn as we go along. But we never really have this sense in adult life, I think, unless we go back and study, that we're acquiring specialist knowledge outside of our own realm. And for me, to have learned the things we've learned with Green Apple and then to see colleagues and actually guests learn. And when you see a guest and you watch them crush their wine bottle and it becomes sand, and then they're holding the sand in their hands, and you see a guy from the island explaining, well, did you know that sand is the biggest ingredient in cement and construction? So actually the cabana that you're staying in is made from these bottles. And to see kind of the light go on in people's eyes, like what a privilege.
So how do you measure success when the outcomes are social or environmental and not financial?
This is a $1 million question, and I feel that somebody should write a book about it. How do we define success? Because if we learn to define success in a way that feels true to us when we're young, then I think we would do a lot less damage as we grow up, because we would be seeking the success that is really what we want, as opposed to the one that society has told us is what we need, right? I could give you the boring, safe answer and say, well, metrics, data. How do we measure success when it's not financial? Well, we have lots of environmental metrics and we have lots of social metrics. So we talk about how many people in our business were promoted last year, as opposed to how many people are employed. So how many people from different socioeconomic backgrounds had an opportunity to progress their career? That's a statistic. How many women are in positions of management? How much money did we put into the local community, not in terms of donations, but in terms of our supply chain? So how did our business economically contribute to our local village? How much water did we reuse? How much energy did we draw from our solar panels? But as I say, these are the dry answers. How do I measure success when it's not financial? And maybe I'm going to sound like a hippie when I say this, but how well do I sleep at night? How safe do I feel when I walk around my islands? How much joy do I get when I go into town and people say like, hey boss, hi Porsche, how comfortable do I feel? How enjoyable is my life? How many favors can I call in when I need one that people are happy to do for me? And I think when I add those things up, and I think, how much money would those things cost me if I didn't have them by doing business the way I do it? How much would it cost me to have a bodyguard? How much would it cost me if I had to buy every favor? How much would it cost me to go to the psychiatrist or to go to the doctor to get sleeping medication? How much stress would I feel? And how much would it cost me to go on holidays to overcome that stress? And I think that for me is a successful approach, is to measure how you feel.
There you go. I think you gave the very nice answer, and I think you should write a book about this. So you have this Townhouse boutique art hotel, and then should I call it the urban canvas or somehow? But from the beach to the city, Townhouse seems to have a completely different vibe. It's raw, urban, artistic. That's how I feel when I read about it. How does that creative energy connect with the rest of your vision?
Townhouse kind of came about. It was a bit of, I won't say it was a mistake, but it was an opportunity. So my partners in Blue Apple had the opportunity to rent this gorgeous building in Cartagena, and they normally run Airbnbs, but they said to me, we think this could be a nice boutique hotel. Would you want to come in with us? And we have the same partnership that we have in Blue Apple, but we'll run it. So if you could just help us come up with the concept. And I thought, I'm an island girl. I grew up in the countryside. I'm not an urban person. I don't actually love being in cities and being around concrete. So I sort of hesitated, but then I thought, this could be kind of fun, right? I get to do something different. I get to explore another side of myself. If you spend some time on Townhouse's website and on our social media, you'll see Townhouse has a real sense of humor. And being in an urban setting, I think just gives us a little bit more connection because people can just walk in. We don't have to do quite as much work to connect with either tourists or with local people. And again, Townhouse gave us an opportunity to create something that nobody else was doing, which is, what I love to do. And it sounds crazy to say it because today, if you come to Cartagena, there are rooftops all over the place. But when we opened Townhouse, there were no rooftops that were open to the public. So the hotels would have their private rooftops for their guests. And if you knew the guy in reception or if you asked very nicely, you might be able to negotiate to go upstairs. But when we opened, we said, no, this is a bar on the roof. It's for everybody. And many, many local Cartagena people would say to us, I don't remember ever having a cocktail at sunset on a rooftop in my own city. And those comments matter to me because tourism does have its roots, I understand, in colonialism and in being extracting and in very much the idea of wealthy people traveling to places so that they can relax, so that they can have fun. And it hasn't always been built around the idea that it can be for local people as well as it can for visitors. And Townhouse was just another way to do that. And the art side, I'm not an artist. I have no talent at all, but to have a canvas where we could just have fun and bring creatives in and not take ourselves too seriously. And we have walls. In Blue Apple, remember, I don't have that many walls. It's all outside. So it just felt like a way to explore my frustrated inner artist who has no talent but loves to be surrounded by beautiful, cool things.
So was there a goal to blur the line between guest and local?
Yes.
Or erase it entirely?
I think lines are rubbish. And I say that in every way. I think economic lines with arrows pointing infinitely into the sky when compared with circular economics don't stand up. I think lines that divide us are silly because, of course, we now talk about intersectionality and we're so many different things. I think everything is a scale or a spectrum. And yes, in the medical world, we have to have a point at which we say, well, this is a diagnosis. And before that point, it's not. But lines to me, they're not something that I think about or I live with or I try to respect. And we're humans. And if I'm living in Cartagena, I have the same right and expectation to enjoy my city as somebody who's visiting. And likewise, when I travel, I don't want to be put in the box of being like, oh, she's a tourist, so she'll want to do this. To me, I'm traveling, I'm simply existing in a different space. And I think that maybe is something that you see across all of the things that I do. They are for all the people that want to have a good time.
There you go. So how do you mean authenticity when the art scene and boutique hospitality can easily become performative?
Constantly asking ourselves questions is a good way to check in and remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. And Townhouse is a very good example. Actually, we've changed it quite a bit since we first opened because the world around us changed. And we said, okay, well, the question that we're answering is no longer the same question. There are now plenty of rooftops. There's lots of accessibility. Cartagena's opened up. There's lots of boutique hotels. What can we do differently? And that was actually when the art element really came into play. And we leaned into this idea of artist residencies where artists can come and actually pay their stay by leaving a piece of art or a mural, or by being a musician and performing. Or actually, we've had environmental engineers who've come and helped us do things at Green Apple. And I consider that a form of art in and of itself. How do we make sure we're not performative? I think it's also because the people that I work with, we do what we do because we enjoy it and we love to challenge ourselves. So when something becomes easy and we feel like we're coasting, instead of sitting back and celebrating and relaxing and having a pina colada, we always seem to find a way to get another challenge in the door. And I think that comes across through what we do, and our clients can see that.
So you have a members-only speakeasy bar there also. And then inside the townhouse, that's another layer, I guess I would call it. A space that's not about being seen, but about belonging. So the member-only speakeasy feels almost like the secret society for thinkers and creators. What inspired that concept?
Actually, I have to admit, members only is just the name, but it's not actually a members club. And my business partners are from New York, and we were all missing jazz, really. And we had this small space in the ground floor of Townhouse that was sort of a lobby, but no one ever really used it. And we said, well, what if we just closed the door and turned this into a jazz bar for us, really? And it was hilarious because we asked our creative director, do you know a jazz band? And he sort of scratched his head and he said, what? I mean, Cartagena has a very, very strong African culture. Jazz obviously is deeply African-American. But jazz per se here, no. But he said, hang on a second. And he went away and he came back with a motley crew of talented musicians. And he made a jazz band from them. And they, in some cases, the singer, she really had to learn English in order to get to grips with some of the American songs. The pianist, I remember when he first started, was super nervous to sing. And then we discovered he has a fabulous voice. It became members only its own thing. And the band at the beginning, we had a band called Motown. Now our band is called Lake Avenue. We run a show called Cartagena's Got Talent, where every month or every couple of months, we try and find new talent in Cartagena. And we've discovered that what happens in Townhouse kind of for the visual arts is happening in members only kind of for the performing arts, that it's become a space where musicians who want to do something a bit different or dancers who want to do something a bit different can try it. Because, of course, I live in a city which has a thriving wedding industry, a thriving events industry. So if you are a talented musician or dancer, generally you can make a really good living by doing what sells. And I think what members only is a little space where people can practice maybe what doesn't sell, but maybe what feeds their soul.
That's an excellent idea. I mean, and also that idea that you call it a speakeasy as a membership club, but in fact it's not. And that gives a nice stage for talent over there. Nice. So let's move over to the Nuestra Cartagena. So if you look at all these projects together, each club, hotels, the foundation, they seem to orbit around a bigger idea, maybe a collective identity. And that's what Nuestra Cartagena seemed to capture. How did that idea evolve?
So since 2024, Cartagena has seen a downward trend in numbers. Now, according to Colombia, which is the National Tourism Board, numbers are up. But when we speak amongst ourselves, anecdotally, across my sector of the industry, everybody's saying, well, numbers are really down. And inflation has been pretty tough. We're operating the last couple of years. I think everybody in hospitality, not just me in Cartagena or in Colombia, but I think people around the globe, it's a tense moment. There's economic uncertainty. There's a lot going on. And rather than sort of complain about it, because that's obviously always our first instinct is to just sort of say, oh, well, things are really difficult and this is really hard. And, the tourism board should do more and someone else should do more. And it was kind of weighing on my mind. And I went for a long run. I used to run marathons and I don't here because it's far too hot. But if I'm kind of stuck somewhere and I'm frustrated, I hit the running machine. And after about, I think it was 60 minutes, I did my full hour. And this kind of light bulb came on. And I said to myself, numbers are down, but this city has more to offer than it's ever had. I've been living here for 10 years. When I first came here, I fell in love with it, but there were maybe like 2 good restaurants. There weren't that many great hotels. We didn't have, that many bars on offer. And I think now there's somewhere to eat, drink, dance, play 3 times a day for 2 weeks and not get bored of it. And they're all independently owned. And they're like, all of these businesses are driven by members of the community. And I was thinking to myself, if I go and I'm going to sound very privileged when I say this, but bear in mind that I used to live in the south of France. If I go to Saint-Tropez or if I'm hanging out in Monaco, yeah, the quality is good, but I'm in these businesses that are owned by private equity. There's maybe not a person behind them. When I travel the world, I've never really seen a place like Cartagena where it feels that it's owned by people and not by companies. And that's really special. So I went around and I knocked on all the doors of all my friends' businesses. And I said, look, guys, we've got an amazing story, but our authorities or our tourism board probably doesn't really know how amazing our story is because they're looking at it from the big picture. And so they may be putting a picture of, a cathedral up on a poster and saying, this is Cartagena. But what we've got, which we know because when our friends come to visit us, they tell us, this is the most fantastic city. What an incredible experience. Wow. Your lives. Why don't we tell that story? So I managed to convince about 20 businesses, I think we are now, to all chip in a bit of money every month to pay for PR agencies around the world. So we hired a PR agency in New York, one in London, and one in Mexico City. And the goal is to tell the story of Cartagena in a real way, rather than sugarcoating it or presenting this UNESCO heritage, beautiful city as if it's a box of chocolates. But actually, we're going to tell the story of what makes us different from other destinations, not what makes us better, but what makes us different. Independently owned businesses, half of the businesses are owned by women. Almost all of them work in some way or another with Green Apple or with other nonprofits. All of them are involved in some way with community building. All of them have a commitment not only to quality, but also to their business being a force for good. And I think to myself, if I were a traveler and I found a destination that was telling this story, I would go there.
Absolutely.
And so that's what Nuestra Cartagena is. It's a collaborative project. It's nonprofit. I don't make any money from it, but it's a way to show our community to the world.
Well done. Yeah. So when you think about everything you're creating, what's the long-term legacy you hope to leave behind for the next generation of conscious hoteliers and change makers? I mean, looking at those young entrepreneurs who are looking up that Portia is doing. And so what is the message you want to leave? Or do you believe legacy is such a word that you don't want to deal with it? Or what is your thoughts?
Well, it's funny. I've often said that legacy is sort of a word that's very tied up in the patriarchy, right? This idea that we're gone, but we have to leave something behind us. And, I don't think that anyone else in nature is thinking about their legacy. They exist and then they don't.
Yes.
That being said, if you can influence in any way how the world is shaped, I suppose the influence that I would like to leave, or even without me having to die to have it, would be for people in business to really explore and investigate what success means and then build their businesses around their own idea of success and to ask themselves, how do I feel and how do I make others feel? But also I would want to remove that line between hoteliers and non-hoteliers, business owners and travelers, because of course, I'm an hotelier, but I'm also a traveler. So I suppose I would want to leave the idea as well in people's minds. When I travel, what am I contributing? Do I see travel as something that is there to serve me? Am I tired and stressed and need my winter sun? Or when I visit a community, what can I leave behind? Maybe it's just my money, but maybe I can interact with people. Maybe I can help create human connections. So I would say curiosity is probably what I would like people to think of when they think of me and my businesses. Who am I? Why do I do what I do? What does success look like? And is there anything that I could do to make anybody else's day or life or environment better?
Well, I think that's a powerful vision, Portia. So it shows that hospitality, when done with purpose, can redefine both destinations and in many ways. So I think it's also you're looking at the bigger picture, how the whole community will thrive, and also the generation that's going to be the entrepreneurs after 10 or 15 years or whatnot. They will pick up many ideas and do things a little bit differently and maybe even better than you have done. And we always hope that things will improve in many ways. So it's thank you very much for sharing your journey and your courage to build things differently. Thank you, Portia.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk.
Portia's work reminds us that the hospitality can be more than service. Her projects reveal what happens when purpose and profit align in balance with place and people. If you enjoy the episode, follow the Social Hotelier Show for more conversations with leaders shaping the future of conscious hospitality. I'm Sam. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep building with purpose.